Hello and welcome to the MMA Live Chat Show. I'm Rich Davie and it's Saturday, October 25th, 2014. On today's show, I'll briefly discuss the TUF 20 Episode 5 show that took place Wednesday, October 22nd, 2014. This week's episode of TUF 20 featured the matchup between the number 6 ranked fighter Felice Herrig and the number 11 seeded fighter Heather Jo Clark. This fight was a rematch between the two fighters, and as we mentioned on the last show, their first fight was back on March 28, 2013 at the Bellator MMA Bellator 94 event, which had Felice Herrig coming out the winner by split decision after 3 rounds. Felice Herrig has 9 wins and 5 losses on her MMA record, and Heather Jo Clark has 6 wins and 4 losses on her MMA record. And at this point, most MMA fans know there was some bad blood between these two ladies going into this fight. Okay, as usual, we got to take a look at some of the tension that takes place before the actual fight. Heather Clark expressed her issues regarding Felice Herrig and stated that she didn't particularly care for Felice's antics, saying that she sees the things that Felice does as trashy, obnoxious, tasteless, and bad for the sport, and that she'd never promote herself in that way. Again, on this episode, Heather was also the target of her teammates' ire, and Gilbert Melendez couldn't help but pick up on the tension and the aggression being expressed by Heather's teammates and decided that it was probably best to call a team meeting to get the issues out in the open rather than talk about the things behind Heather's back. I don't know how much of this show is being edited for dramatic purposes here, but obviously this is what they do because we've heard a couple of fighters say this in the past. But most of the other women on Heather's team are not shy about expressing their dislike of Heather personally. And as we mentioned on the last show, Heather's teammates are a bit annoyed that she hasn't fully been training with the team. Heather explained that she has a knee injury that's preventing her from fully participating, but her teammates clearly think that she's milking the injury and using that as an excuse not to participate. The team meeting really didn't go all that well if the purpose was to squash the tension between Heather and the rest of the team, and things basically ended up with Angela Magana scolding Heather and saying that it's really hard for us to cheer for you. Angela also went on to say that most of the team will not be cheering for her in the cage when she fights Felice. Obviously, this left Heather feeling a bit dejected, so I don't know, I actually started to feel a bit sorry for Heather. And as the tension between her and the rest of the girls seems to, keep growing with each episode rather than subsiding, that sort of thing has to take, some sort of, mental stress and mental pressure on a fighter going into a fight that, just can't be good for the fighter. Then we also got to take a look at Felice Herrig's mindset before the fight as well. Felice stated that she doesn't really know where the bad blood comes from between her and Heather. But she does seem to be a bit more concerned in this episode about how things are going with her coaches rather than with Heather's issues with her. Felice, like I said, she seems to be struggling with the style of her team's coaching staff, and she really didn't appear to want to take their advice from the staff about actually adopting a game plan for the fight with Heather, and she was quite visibly annoyed with what the coaching staff wanted to go with there, and Felice really didn't seem to think that she wanted to take on all the extra pressure, and she really didn't want to adopt a game plan that they thought. She wanted to just go and do her own thing. It also seemed like she's having issues regarding her ability to take the win of the match. She was starting to second guess herself throughout the show and was seeking reassurances from Coach Pettis as to whether or not she could get the win, and Coach Pettis definitely assured her that she could. She basically was trying to convince herself that she beat Heather once in the past and she could beat her again, which is to be expected. I don't know why she was actually feeling that way. I mean, she looks to be in the best shape of her life, in my opinion. And as I stated on the preview show that we did last time out, I thought that she was going to win by TKO in 2, but I don't know. It didn't look like either one of the ladies was actually confident totally going into the fight with what we saw in this episode. Both of them seem to be struggling with mental issues, more so Felice doubting herself. And again, on Heather's part, with your teammates kind of beating up on you like that and ganging up on her the way that they are, I guess that also has to take a toll on you mentally as well. Okay, now let's move on to the grudge match here that the fans and the two fighters were waiting for so long. Round one was very close. Felice came out attacking Heather's legs with kicks, and Heather looked to be wanting to actually box. Felice shot in for a takedown. Heather got Felice in a pretty nasty guillotine choke that looked to be really solid. And I actually thought the fight was going to end in the first round in favor of Heather Clark with that guillotine because it looked like Felice was in a very bad way. And it didn't look like she had much hope of getting out of that, but she pushed on and she did what she had to do there. I don't recall actually how long Felice was in that guillotine, but it felt like a real long time to me. And Heather just kept trying to crank on even tighter with that guillotine there, and I thought Felice was actually going to tap there. But unfortunately for Heather, she wasn't able to finish that submission, and Felice finally got her head free. After Felice escaped the guillotine, the two fighters clinched for a bit, and then things went to the ground, with Felice trying for a triangle choke that actually transitioned into an armbar. And the ground game started getting, a little bit odd looking there. I mean, both ladies were exhibiting some kind of awkward moves on the ground there. It was kind of odd to watch that there, but I don't recall seeing anything quite that awkward on the ground with the way that the two were going after each other on the ground there. But Felice wound up on top in the closing seconds of round one and then landed a few shots to Heather. As I said there a minute ago, it was a very close round. It could have actually gone either way, but I scored round one 10-9 for Felice Herrig. Moving on to round two. Round two started out with both fighters wanting to go with the same strategy that they started out with in round one. Felice started out with low kicks, and Heather was looking to work her boxing again. The two fighters tied up quickly. Felice seemed to be a bit stronger than Heather. She took Heather to the ground, where Felice looked like she was going to have no problem securing the double hooks, but Heather made that a bit difficult for her. Felice did eventually get both hooks in, and she started looking for the rear naked choke, but Heather wasn't quite ready to give up so easily. Heather did absorb some punishment from Felice employing a bit of ground and pound. Heather finally fought off all of the attacks from Felice and wound up on top with a little under 2 minutes remaining in the round. And after a brief time with Heather on top, the ref stood them up, which I thought was a bit premature there because, it wasn't like, anybody was trapped up against the cage or anything and nothing was really happening. It was actually Heather's first moment in the round where she may have had a chance to actually, score some points there. But after they got back to the feet, the two fighters started trading punches and knees, and Felice, to me, appeared to be, the more effective fighter in that instance there, and she was also landing harder shots as well. Heather was landing some shots, but they just, didn't have any steam on them, and I don't know if she had already given up mentally at that point because of what transpired earlier in the round. But with the closing couple minutes of the round, Felice wound up getting another takedown. And again, she looked to be the stronger of the two fighters. And in the final seconds of the round there, Felice was just looking much better. And the round ended with Felice looking much sharper than she did in round two and to be the more effective fighter. I thought it was a good fight, probably the second best fight to date of this season. And there was no doubting how round two went. Round two was clearly a 10-9 round for Felice. And I had her winning the fight 20-18, but I wouldn't have complained if the fight actually went to a third round because round one was fairly close. And, I guess if Heather might have done a little bit more, and I don't know if her arms got tired from, trying to crank on that guillotine choke there or what happened there, but if she would have struck a little bit more in round one and scored a few more points in round one, likely the fight would have gone to a third round. But the judges uh, actually scored the fight 2018 unanimously for Felice Herrig. So Felice Herrig defeats Heather Jo Clark by unanimous decision. And she moves on in the tournament to face Randa Marcos in her next fight, which will probably be a bit more difficult um, for her than this fight here. Um, Again, like I said, I thought that the first fight between Tisha Torres and Randa Marcos, that was probably the best fight of the season so far, or at least the most competitive anyway. And if that fight was any indication of how the matchup between Randa Marcos and Felice Herrig is going to go, I think it's going to be a little tougher for Felice Herrig in her next fight with Randa Marcos. One thing that I did think was nice there after the fight, Heather Clark extended an olive branch to Felice Herrig in an effort to put an end to their public feud. And she did state to Felice that she had no right to judge her for the way that she promotes herself. And it looked like Felice initially seemed to accept the truce and the apology because she was more than willing to put her arms around her, give her a hug, and it seemed like she was accepting that. But after the TUF 20 episode 5 show was over, both Felice and Heather appeared on the TUF Talk show immediately afterwards, and it appears that Felice apparently had changed her mind about calling an end to the feud. Don't know why that would be. It doesn't seem to me like there's really any benefit into keeping the feud going because, you know, I don't think these two ladies are going to be fighting each other anytime in the near future now that Felice has 2 wins over Heather. And at this point, one can only speculate why the change of heart on Felice's part. But, my speculation would be that she's looking to keep the tension and the bad blood going so that there can still be a feud between the two. But like I said a moment ago there, I don't think that's even worth it because more than likely these two won't be fighting in the near future. Maybe down the road they'll have another fight, but I don't think that's likely to happen because of the 2 wins that Felice has over her now. I don't think too many more people will be interested in seeing a third match between the two. Okay, there was some other unfortunate news on the show. Unfortunately, Justine Kish had a problem with her knee injury that we mentioned on the last show. There was an MRI done on Justine's knee, and the results were not good or welcome news for Justine. Justine Kish has an ACL tear and will have to undergo a reconstructive surgery, which has forced her to drop out of the tournament. She was actually very heartbroken from that. You could see that, she was torn apart from that. She had worked so hard, she stated, to make it to where she is, and unfortunately, that injury, as we mentioned on the last show, it looked to be pretty bad. And with the teasers that were out there were only really 2 ladies who were expressing that they had knee issues. One was Justine Kish, and the other was Heather Clark. So it looked like Justine Kish's knee injury was a bit worse than Heather Clark. So we speculated on the last show that it was going to likely be Justine Kish that was going to be removed from the tournament. And in fact, she was there. She had to go ahead and get that surgery, as I explained a moment ago. Okay, so with Justine Kish out, we also mentioned on the last show that we did that there were 2 ladies that were likely to return. As we've seen in the past, when a fighter is removed from the TUF tournament, they usually take another fighter from the house or one of the other fighters that were not accepted into the house from preliminary fights to get into the house. But this season, what they did was because they had the 16 women already ranked, and it looks like their strategy this season for TUF is to, get the very best women a shot at the title for the belt. And what happened in this episode, we were saying on the last show that it was either going to be Tisha Torres to come back or it was going to be Angela Hill because they put on the 2 best performances out of the ladies that have been eliminated thus far. Clearly, Tisha Torres put on, the better performance over Angela Hill. But as I expressed on the last show, I actually thought that Tisha Torres was going to be um, not the one to come back because she was saying that she had an injury on the Tough Talk show after her fight with Randa Marcos. And just kind of odd how that injury now has subsided for her and she's good enough to come back and fight. So one has to actually question, was that injury that Tisha Torres suffering from in the fight against Randa Marcos really an issue for her? Or as some people like to say, was that just an excuse for her to explain as to why she lost the matchup with Randa Marcos and why her performance in the fight wasn't what most people were expecting, because she was actually ranked number 3, and I believe Randa Marcos was ranked number 14. So I don't know. I actually thought that maybe Angela Hill would get the nod to come back in because she did put on a good fight, and she looked to be pretty vicious there in the highlight videos that are floating out there on the internet about her. And also in her training and what we saw from TUF, it looked like she was a pretty vicious striker, and she had some brutal leg striking as well. So I actually thought they might give her another chance rather than take a fighter back in who was complaining about an injury. I don't know if Tisha actually expressed that on the TUF show, but she did express it on the Tough Talk episode right after her fight aired on Fox Sports 1 when she appeared on the show with Karen Bryant. So who knows? We'll see what happens in the next fight with Tisha Torres as to whether or not she's going to say that she still is having troubles with that injury or what. But it would have been nice to see somebody come back who didn't have an injury. And, again, like I said, I don't think Angela Hill is ranked number 16. I can understand why they ranked her that way with only one professional fight and one professional win, but in MMA. But it is what it is, and Tisha Torres is now back. The only person that's actually happy about that decision by Dana White was Tisha Torres. Team Melendez wasn't happy about the news because they didn't want to lose a teammate, and Gilbert Melendez was obviously not happy due to the amount of time and work that he put in training with Tisha, and Tisha was also his number 1 pick, so he was quite upset about that. And they had a team meeting with Team Melendez where they were sitting there expressing their discontent with what transpired there with losing Tisha to the other team there. Team Pettis wasn't happy about the decision because they didn't appear to want a new teammate, and most especially Tisha Torres, who Carlos Esparza has an obvious issue with. I don't know if any of you have seen some of the things that Carla has said about Tisha Torres, but she said some pretty nasty things about her, and she said that it was not only the way that she felt about things, but the way that some of the other girls in the house felt. But it was pretty mean-spirited what Carla said about her. But I guess there's some bad blood between those two as well, and I'm going to guess that those things were likely due to the fact that Tisha Torres defeated Felice Herrig by unanimous decision in her last fight back in Invicta FC. The actually the Invicta FC 7 event in December of 2013, and that loss put Felice Herrig in a bad frame of mind, nearly causing Felice to hang up her MMA gloves. So a good friend that Carla Esparza is, trying to support her friend and go after Tisha, but it was a bit out of hand. I'm not going to reiterate the things that you said about her because I thought they were pretty mean-spirited. But if you're interested, I don't recall exactly where it was at. It might have been on Carla Esparza's score page or her Twitter page, or maybe even on Facebook. But if you're interested in seeing what she had to say about her, it's on one of those social networking sites that Carla Esparza has. As far as Felice Herrig goes, she stated that she has no problem at all with Tisha joining Team Pettis, but Carla went on to reiterate that she is not going to be helping Tisha Torres at all in any way. So I don't know. Kind of bad blood there, and I guess that's just going to continue going on until maybe those two ladies have a talk or meet up with each other and decide to bury the hatchet there. But a little drama there that's probably going to continue throughout the season, and unfortunately they're on the same team, so who knows? Maybe we're going to start seeing Tisha Torres getting the same amount of disrespect that Heather Clark is getting on her team from the girls on her team, being that most of the girls on Team Pettis weren't really interested in having Tisha Torres show up there. And as far as Team Melendez goes, with their teammating, DFW obviously caught wind of the dissatisfaction by Team Melendez, and he had to pay the team a visit to remind everyone that this is not a team sport and that there's only going to be one winner that takes the belt when all is said and done. So, really hard to argue with that rationale, and even more so, it's difficult to argue with the boss man and remain in his good graces there. So, that pretty much put an end to the vocalization of all the discontent about what's going on there with Tisha Torres moving on over to Team Pettis and Team Melendez losing their number one pick fighter. Okay, so now moving on to next week's episode here on the episode 6 show. Team Pettis maintains control, and they choose the number 5 ranked fighter Aisling Daly to face off against the number 12 ranked Angela Magana. That should be a pretty interesting fight there. I'm not quite sure how that's going to wind up there. Still need to make my assessment on that one there. But as far as next week goes, it'll be the number 5 ranked fighter, Aisling Daly, to face off against the number 12 ranked fighter, Angela Magana. All right, that pretty much sums up the TUF 20 episode 5 show. Thanks again to those of you who have been watching the TUF 20 preview and recap shows that we've been doing on this season of the MMA Live Chat Show. We truly appreciate the interest and support that you've been showing for the shows that we're doing about the TUF 20 episodes for previews and recaps. Truly appreciate it. We really do. And if any of you would like to join us on any of the shows that we do, we also do prediction shows for most UFC events, and we also do recap shows for most of the UFC events as well. If you'd like to join us in those shows, just pop on over to our forum where we plan the shows. That would be the MMA chat forum. Create an account there. Let me know that you would like to join us, and I'll give you access to the forum where we plan the shows. And again, thanks for listening, and we will see you all next time. Have a great one, people. Bye-bye.